G'day all. Into another episode of my story. This one is going to be on, I'll call it enacting the exit plan and a little bit of the post separation period. Um, Timeline wise, I'm going to muddle this one up quite a bit. I suspect this episode is going to be pretty long because a l a lot happened. A lot happened, in this period, so I guarantee you, it's gonna be a long episode, but I also guarantee you, that I will miss quite a lot because a significant amount of things happened during this period. So, this is gonna be the period between, redundancy 1 and redundancy 2. So in the last episode, we landed on being made redundant while I was planning my exit. And then between that period to getting a new job and then being made redundant from that job, that's what I'll kind of cover. And it's before Child Protective Services came knocking on my door with some pretty, pretty scary accusations and false allegations. And I'll save that one for the next episode. But this episode is all about the time period when I was attempting to enact the exit plan. And this um, was really challenging because at the time, and again, everybody's situation is unique. My particular situation and my particular uh, legal advice was to not leave the property because in this context, it would be perceived as abandoning the property to my abuser and abandoning my children from a custody perspective to her. So now, if you can imagine this, um, we've had a discussion around divorce, which has been a couple of very heated discussions on both sides, screaming and yelling on both sides. And rather than somebody leaving the house, now we're both still living in the house. And if you recall in the last episode, I'd already been living for years, sleeping on the couch. So, not much had changed in that regard from a sleeping arrangement. But also, um, here I was with the gravity of the advice, which said legal advice. And again, everybody's situation is unique. This has just happened to be mine. Which said, "Hey, we recognize that you are trying to leave a abusive situation, um, but in order to set you up for success, you have to stay with your abuser." So I had to stay in the house. I call it kind of trapped for a period of time. It ended up being about, off the top of my head, it was about 5 months before I ended up moving in with my mother. So this is again the kind of that period. So I'll go through that period of my life. It was messy, um, and I'm probably what I might do for this episode is break it into some kind of broad themes that I'll step through, and I might land the episode at the end around um, my legal journey as well. And again, this is my personal legal journey, but some reflections on what that component felt like for me as well. And again, it was my specific experience. It's not the same for everyone. So that's the kind of context. So my internal state during this period was not great. You don't come out of the awakening moments, which I spoke about in a couple of episodes ago, and buck up the courage, to get the balls to try to exit out of an abusive relationship. And then suddenly walk along like you're responding perfectly. Like you don't. Like you're an absolute confused mess of not knowing which way up is, not knowing if you're the abuser, not knowing if you're the problem, bouncing around from this, kind of trauma splitting, cognitive dissonance, and all the other wonderful things that kind of occur where you're fucking up constantly. Like you're making mistakes in this period where you're trying to respond properly to this abusive person who has ramped up her abuse, but you yourself are in a fog, like you can barely think straight because you're just barely holding it all together. You're reactive. You are not responsive. You're reactive. You're seeking to try to understand the abuse as much as possible. So you're trying to cling on to the kind of delicate balance between recognizing someone who's manipulating you in a tactic versus having to react slash respond to something that might set you up for failure as a part of the exit. So, we're going to do this and you're going to respond to it thinking, hey, if I don't respond to this, then I'm going to fuck up my future or I'm going to, lose custody of the kids and all that kind of stuff. And then not recognizing or telling the difference between something that, you should be um, seeing as manipulation only versus something you should be seeing as something you have to respond to because it's going to hurt you later down the track. And it's really fucking confusing. My language, really confusing. So I was very far from staying and steady and all that kind of stuff. I was a mess. I was making constant mistakes. I was struggling just generally. I had picked up some habits which, later would help steady me, which was I started going on very regular walks and then very regular runs, despite the dodgy ankle. And then I found a gym to kind of start to go to and hit up very regularly because I needed that physical release, which I later discovered doing trauma coaching. Um, Training was is more around how to regulate the body because trauma lives in the body. So I'm in this kind of weird situation where we're in the same house. I can't financially afford to move into two houses, so we couldn't even come up with any informal agreements. And we had to kind of navigate that space while being a complete basket case mess with someone who was both trying to drag me back into it all, but also expressing so much hatred towards me as well. So it was a challenging system, and there's a commentary in there if you think about it, which is um, there should be a pathway for a male victim of abuse to exit safely. The male victim of abuse shouldn't have to say, I have to stay with my abuser so that I don't lose custody and don't lose my assets, even though that's ended up almost what was happened, which I'll get to in a different episode. But that situation is just mind boggling. And in Australia, there are no kind of support mechanisms to lean into. And I went through that again in another episode. So I was leaning heavily on my family, who were kind of partly not yet believing me at that point, but also on my therapist, Scott, who is absolutely fantastic. So a couple of things that happened. So her dad ended up pulling me aside to ask me, "Hey, what's going on?" So I told him, and I said, "Hey, look, there's a lot of pretty shocking stuff going on, and One of the worst components is she has falsely accused me of something terrible towards the kids, and that's just mind-boggling. And her dad, his response to it is just kind of burned in my mind because he apologized. He said, "Hey, hey, sorry, 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 sorry. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. If I had been a better dad, if I had been a better dad, look, she does this to me. She accuses me of the same things. It's okay because she accuses me. So it's okay. Like no, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. Like I'm just such a terrible dad. I'm such a terrible dad." And I remember standing there thinking, "What the fuck? Like you are." Taking full accountability for her actions. And if you've heard some of my other content, you'll know his response probably isn't much of a surprise, but taking full responsibility for her actions and absolving her of what was going on. And I had this moment where I was staring at him thinking, if I stay, you're who I will become. I will eventually get to this point where I am apologizing like he did. Like he would literally go, sorry, 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 sorry. Oh, it's all my fault, it's all my fault, all my fault, when it had nothing at all to do with him. And I'd be like, I think that's where she wants me to become. Like if I continue to accept this emotional abuse, these psychological abuse tactics, then I eventually will become this person who's doing this. So in some respects, I appreciated that that happened because I could look at it, but also it broke my heart. Like this poor man. And again, you'll have to look at some of my other videos where I talk about it. But this poor man used to get screamed and yelled at something chronic by my wife. Like I know I used to sit there and go, "Hey, what the fuck are you yelling at him for? He's done nothing wrong." And then she would lash out at me. "Don't you fucking talk about something you don't fucking know about." And it would be insane. And this poor man who had been beaten down by his daughter her entire life, to a point where he was this, no offense to him, sniveling wreck. And I just saw this flash forward of what my life would be, where I was this sniveling wreck, or it could have gotten much, much worse. So we, I'll make commentary on the legal process later, but then we started the legal process of working through separation and divorce and asset division and all that kind of stuff. And here, fuck, like I'm not going to be able to cover everything that occurred, but I would get things like these screaming matches where she would be um, kind of over the top of me, just yelling at me about, um, "You owe me financially. I have had to sacrifice so much for you. I had to give up everything. I made you. I made you. I made you." It would be that kind of stuff. So you owe me financially. You owe me. I want to see my return on investment. And you'd hear that. You'd be like, fucking hell, is that all you care about? Like, and I used to think it's very clear that's all she cares about. And then, the next minute it'll be, "Oh, I really wish we could make this work, and I really do love you and you can trust me, and I think we can do this ourselves. I don't think we need to get lawyers involved. In fact, I think your lawyer is probably going to be quite expensive, like knowing you, and you don't make really good decisions about who lawyers are and how to pick the right people to represent you, so you'll probably pick someone who's really, really bad, and I'm going to be there. I'm always going to support you. Like, I will always do right by you, so maybe you drop your lawyer and we just use my lawyer to get everything sorted." So you'd have this type of stuff occurring all the time, and you'd be, like, sitting there going, partly getting drawn into it, because you're still a mess and you're still all over the place and you're still confused and you're still believing some of this gaslighting stuff and you're thinking maybe I don't know how to pick the right lawyer, maybe I did get the wrong, but also kind of going, hey, I'm really starting to see you now. So just to get back into coaching mode for a second, this is a very delicate period where you're now starting to recognize and see the tactics for what they are, and the more you start to see it, the more it starts to get revealed to you. But also, when you do see it, you do start to partly gaslight yourself a bit about maybe I'm the abuser, maybe I caused her to do this, and you work in those weird circular logics. So you do need to be mindful of it. Sorry, I'll get out of coaching mode and get back into storytelling mode. But so you'd have these kind of things that would occur, and then you'd have these threats like, um, I'm going to show people the corn that's on your computer. And then you'd be like, what are you talking about? And then you'd find out because she had a degree in cybersecurity, which obviously made things, well, half a degree. She was halfway through doing it on these types of things. And you'd be like, the fuck have you put on my computer? And then you'd have these screaming matches where she would be saying, I know things about you that you don't know that I know. I've got stuff off your computer. And you'd be like, what the hell have you gotten? Like, what have you done? Like, and you'd be going, you'd genuinely be panicked and frightened because you'd be like, I think she has planted stuff. And then she'd drop all these hints about things that she may or may not have planted. So it was a very scary time. And then on top of that, there'd be these, uh, what do you call it? Smear campaigns. So here is a point in most people's journey where you've you're at the point of trying to exit now. Like you've had your awakening moment, you've thought it through. You said, "Hey, I'm going to exit." You've probably reached out to a support service or two, and you've found nothing. So you start reaching out to friends and family. And when you do, you soon discover that she's already done quite a lot of work to um, frame you up as a highly abusive, volatile individual who has been harming her along the way. And it comes to you, to be honest, more often than not, as a complete surprise. Like, you'll be talking to your own sister-in-law, and your own sister-in-law will be going, "Well, I spoke to her like 2 months ago and she said X, Y, Z." And you'd be like, "What? What do you mean you spoke to her?" "Oh, no, she called because she was worried about you and worried that you were becoming unhinged," and all this type of stuff. So the smear campaign doesn't just kind of happen post abuse. The smear campaign happens much, much, much earlier than that. And you'd be having these conversations with people who would go, "Hey, what are you doing to her? How dare you treat your wife in the way that you are?" Or people who you would reach out asking for help and support, who would immediately assume that you are an abuser trying to tell a different story. Oh, you're just trying to reframe. You're just trying to you're the abuser because your wife has been telling us for ages that you have anger management issues and that you're all over the shop and you're mentally unstable, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're reaching out now trying to tell us that she's abusive, then we know that you are actually the abuser trying to reframe the story as her being the abuser. So you'd have that stuff that happened. So you'd reach out and there'd be nothing. There'd be nobody to talk to who believes you because a smear campaign had already been well underway before you even realized you needed to get out there and talk to people for help. So you feel so isolated, so isolated. And the every additional the term is flying monkey, every additional flying monkey who reaffirms her story and her narrative does further damage to you because it either gaslights you or it pains you that there's someone who believes this about you, or it makes you go, maybe um, maybe I am, maybe I am the abuser. Like maybe I am. Like you know, she must have been telling people for a reason. Like maybe I am actually that bad. Maybe I am actually really, really bad as a human being. So it can be quite debilitating, that period of trying to enact an exit when you're kind of the way I envisioned it at the time, because I love a good metaphor, was and being an Aussie, I had to do this anyway because being an Australian, you have to. It's like you're in the surf, and for those of you who have been in the surf, if you get caught in the surf and you get spun about, you don't know which way up is. Everything around you is this vortex of, maybe to take it out of an Australian. No, I'll have to keep it in the Australian metaphor. Sorry. It's like, spinning around in this vortex where you're getting buffeted every way that you could possibly think of. You're getting smashed. You can't breathe. You can't see clearly. Your feet haven't touched the sand at the bottom, so you don't know which way up or down is. And it is freaking scary. Like that's the best analogy I can think of for this moment when you're attempting to enact the exit, and when you're flailing your arms out looking for somebody, anybody to hold on to, and all the hands you thought that might be there as support and help actively reject you and side with your abuser, it's really, really, really intimidating. And then, so you'd go to childcare, like you're dropping the kids off to childcare and those types of stuff, and you would see the way that other parents are behaving towards you, and they would look at you like you are this vile leper of a human being, and you'd be going, "Hey, aside from the fact that it took me a really long time to get a part of." I'll tell, I'll tell you this because it's friggin' classic, yeah. She took full control. There's a WhatsApp group that we had for all the parents in the childcare kids, and you had to be invited in. And I kept asking, "Hey, look, can I get invited in?" Because all the parents are talking to each other, and they're all planning the logistics. And the only way I can know what's happening with the events that are happening at the childcare is through you. And she'll go, "Oh, no, I don't know how to do it. No, no, it can't be possible." And, "Oh, no, yeah, yeah, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. I'm just in the middle of something." So it'll be all of this kind of stuff. And then I remember at one particular point, when I was starting to stand up for myself, I started to get really insistent. And this had been, like a year of trying to get onto this WhatsApp group. Started getting really insistent. "Hey, let me be a part of the parents group." And she just lost her shit at. She was like, um, I'll have to figure out what tactic this drops into, but she essentially said, "I don't want you anywhere near it because if you are, then you will be pressuring me around responding to the group. You'll be on my neck all the time, and it'll make it just terrible and toxic an environment if you're there." And I was thinking at the time, I have never in my life ever done that. I would never dare to be the type of person who ever pestered her, because if you even hinted a tone with her, she loses her shit. So you'd be like, "This is just madness." And this is when you're now into awakening moments and you're starting to see the kind of maddening reframes of manipulation that people do. But the SME campaign had been well underway, and I was really struggling to find support outside of Scott and my lawyer. And on top of this, like, your abuser will continue to threaten. So we were in this negotiation period with the lawyers, and I rather thankfully, and for um, take your legal advice from your lawyer, but my legal advice at the time was always do everything through the lawyers, irrespective of the cost. Do everything through the lawyers, and that was all comms related to asset division and custody, related discussions. Even though we were living together, and I would get these screaming matches where it'd be like, "You have to agree to blah blah blah," and I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, well, we can work that out through writing, and we can put that through the lawyers, and we can do it that way." No, you and I need to agree this right now, right now. Yeah, and I'd have to hold the line and go, "No, no, no. We'll work this through the lawyers." So there's a lesson. Sorry to put the coaching hat back on. So there's a lesson in there, which is there are times in that exiting planning and exiting moments where you'll need to hold the line irrespective of the manipulation and irrespective of what is said. And those times are when you have to be tactical. So they're a tactical moment where you go, I am not going to agree to anything that's not in writing with my abusive, manipulative uh, abuser, because I know it cannot be trusted. So I have to go through the lawyers because that will be in writing. And it actually turned out to be beneficial to have done that way in my situation anyway. So she would do this thing where um, she would make demands. So again, I'm uh, jumping around in timelines a little bit because this was a very messy period. But she'd make these demands through the lawyer, and they'd be friggin' insane, like absolute boggles your mind insanity. And we would negotiate, 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 and then land on something. And then I would agree, and I'd say, yes, okay, we agree to this separation of assets and this custody arrangement. Please sign the divorce papers and just sign the forms. And then she'd go dead silent. And then a month would go by, and my lawyer would be chasing up, going, "Hey, you got you had 2 weeks to sign. What's going on?" And then get nothing in response. And then eventually, she would she she would what's the uh, counter negotiate her last negotiation. So you'd be going, she would counter, and you'd be like, "No, no, no, like we are agreeing to your terms. Why are you countering your own terms?" And then she would start all over again, and then we go back into that process, and then we'd be renegotiating everywhere. And then these the terms that would be established. Have a look at some of the tips on my website. But she would do this stuff where she would want really specific language to be dropped into parenting agreements. And again, have a look at the website, but it'll be things like irrespective of it being 50-50 custody, um, the children will live with mum and only ever visit dad. So there'll be these kind of framing up that would be um, positioned within the custody paperwork. So I would be going through these um, potential contracts as fine as I could, being fully aware how manipulative she was and how she would try to squeeze certain types of things into these types of agreements. So I'd have to be working really closely. Had to be working really closely with my lawyer to go over each and every one of these letters and each and every one of these terms, and go, hey, no, this is worded in a particular way that I understand that she will take that as she now has primary custody, irrespective of it being 50-50. So we need to get the language changed. And then there'll be things like uh, it was all about the money. It was all about the money. But all of these assets that were a part of the property and that a part of the household were off the table. Like the paintings, the gold, the shares, all that kind of stuff were all off the table. They're hers. There was just these are not to be included. That kind of stuff. Even my grandmother's inheritance, my grandmother's inheritance off the table. That's hers. All that stuff was all just stuff that she would include. And you get to this interesting period. So this is where you're still in this. Like, don't forget, we're still in the same house together. Yeah. And we are negotiating through lawyers, and we have the kids, and we're in this weird hostage situation where we're working this through. So it's really fucking like constant panic, like consistent levels of panic, 24/7. And you're trying to work through all of this stuff. So um, you would get arguments that were designed to destabilize you during this period. So again, this is you are enacting your exit plan, where she would, aside from the threats, she would start to make statements and say things that were designed to get you really off kilter and like you're the worst dad in the possible. Like, you are so toxic towards the children. I regret ever meeting you. You destroyed my life. I'm going to tell the whole world about you. All that kind of stuff. Like, you would get that constantly, and it would kill you. Like, it would pain you, and you would be completely destabilized throughout the whole lot. And then again, I'm not going to be able to cover everything that happened because like a week would go by and a billion things would happen in that week, and you would have these uh, periods where again, when we're still in the same house. This is still in still in that 5 month period. We I remember I dropped the kids off, for I had them for, a weekend. I took them to my mum's, and, I wasn't allowed to have a car. Um, I don't know if you recall from a previous story, I was required to sell my car to buy hers, so I had to borrow her car. And, when I came back, and kinda got back to it, she cornered me in the kitchen and just started screaming at me about uh, if you found a black notebook in the car, I want to talk to you about it. I want to talk to you about it. And I honestly didn't. I hadn't found a black notebook in my car at all, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I hadn't even gone through the car to look at anything. I just borrowed the car to the kids, went about business, all that kind of stuff. And there's this interrogation technique, which is repetition. So she just continued. Just tell me the truth. 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 If you saw it, I will explain it. Just tell me the truth. Just tell me the truth. If you saw it, you can tell me. You can tell me. You can tell me. It was just this kind of crazy repeating of the same thing, with me consistently saying, "I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I didn't find a black book. Oh, I'm." And again, you got to be careful doing this. I even got to a point where I said, "Look, I'm not sure where the miscommunication here, but the words coming out of my mouth are, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see anything like that." You be careful being glib like that, because an abuser in this instance will get quite angry. How dare you speak to me like that? Which is very similar to what happened. And then I I remember I don't know if this is a stupid thing or not, but I remember someone asking me, "Oh, did you go looking then, therefore, for a black notepad?" And I actually said, "No, I didn't go looking for a black notepad because that's an invasion of privacy. Like, it feels bad going looking for this thing that she was panicking over having read. So no, I didn't go looking for it." And whether you can call me stupid for that, go ahead. But that was me going, no, I'm going to stick to, irrespective of everything that's going on, I'm going to stick to my morals and I'm going to stick to my values. And doing something like that feels like a gross invasion of privacy. Looking for someone's private notepad and having a look. So then, I'll stick on this one. I won't come back to it. So then, um, about a month later, I was home alone, and there was like half an hour before she was due back, and I went, "Fuck it, I'm gonna look for this black notepad." And I went looking, and I stopped halfway, and I'm like, "I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. It's just it feels wrong doing it." And then I was like, "No, fuck this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it." And I went looking for this black notepad, and then again went, "No, I'm not gonna do this." And I went back, and um, so that's 15, 20 minutes of trying to look, and then I'm looking at my watch, going, "She's due back in about 15 minutes. Fuck it, I'm gonna look." So I went and had a look, and so she had the master bedroom. So don't forget, I didn't have a bedroom to sleep in, so she had the master bedroom, and I found it in this drawer, and I open it up, and I'm like, "Oh, there's nothing too crazy in here. I don't know if this is what she was worried about." And then I turn another page, and it was uh, details on how to falsely accuse me of physical abuse of the children, and this conversation she'd obviously had with someone where she had taken notes around how to file false reports, what she should be doing in terms of making sure she gets more financial what do they call it? Child support, and how she can get more money out of the kind of separation. And therefore, what she should be doing is placing reports with different groups to register me as someone who physically abuses the children. And then she had notes around, yep, so therefore she had reached out to these different groups and had reported me as physically abusive towards the kids for these particular incidences. And the incidences in question, like, um, uh, thankfully, they were exaggerations of truth as opposed to fabrications. Because one was when I had one of my daughters, and I slipped and I dropped her and I caught her, and she listed that as physical abuse. I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So I'm looking at my watch, going, "Shit, she's due back any minute." Quickly took some photos of it, as you do, put everything back as best I could see him, shut the door, and then like literally left the bedroom. And then just as I left the bedroom, she's come in to the house, and so I had barely had enough time to process what I had read. So I like God knows what she thought, but I got to this. Um, uh, It's kind of there's a survival adaptation you do in crisis moments where you park everything, and I just parked it all. I'm gonna process that later. Right now, my survival is I smile, I behave the way that she's expecting me to behave. I make sure that she's happy and satisfied. Otherwise, she's gonna get really abusive. So I put on the show that you need from a survival point of view. And again, those of you who have been in abusive situations understand exactly what that means. So I put on my show to make sure she was okay, while quietly in the back of my mind going, "The fuck did I just read? I just read that she has already reported me for physically abusing the children, and from the looks of it, it was months ago. So I'm surprised I haven't had anyone knocking on the door." And quietly thinking, I have to figure this out. So then when I did finally get a moment to myself, like late at night that night, the kind of weight of some of this stuff was starting to hit, because at this particular juncture, she still hadn't, like, she had privately made threats around, I'm going to tell people about your corn, and I'm going to tell people that you're abusive to the children, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't know she'd actually done it. And I didn't know she had actually done, like, that one was just physical abuse. She had made threats that were 10 times worse toward, accusing me of things towards the kids that were much, much worse. That then had me going, um, this is, um, it was actually a very eye opening moment, because I was sitting there going, I have now removed all doubt in my mind that the person I am in the house with at the moment is abusive, is manipulative and is evil, is downright evil. So I had that moment of kind of going, now that I have seen that she is making up all these false allegations and reporting me, I now know for fact that this is an evil human being that is in my life. So it was a tough time, and it was a scary time, and she would use um, my kids as leverage for pretty much um, everything, and all the while, one side of our face saying, let's always, I'll always have your best interest. I'll always have your best interest. You know that I will always have your best interests. On one side of her face, while on the other, she was doing these, pretty horrendous things, as well, while also saying, things like, if you agree to my terms, I will not take the kids. There was at one point, so this is before the last redundant. Yeah, so this is before the last redundancy. It was, I expect you to pay me $5,200 per month. In It's the Australian version of alimony. So if there's any Aussies listening, yes, we do have alimony in Australia. It's the Australian version of alimony, which is called spousal maintenance. I expect you to pay me $5,200 per month, irrespective of how much money you are earning at the time. Plus, I laugh now, but fucking hell. Plus, plus you are to pay me child support. Plus, you are to uh, be 100% responsible for any and all expenses relating to the rearing of the children, irrespective of households. So that's bills, that's food, that's all that kind of stuff. So that's child support plus alimony plus any bill related to the children. Plus, what was it? You have to be oh um, any extracurricular activities that the children are involved in is 100% the responsibility of you, as in me, to take them there, irrespective of who has custody. So if the kids went to dance class or anything like that, then I had to go to her house, pick them up, and then take them to dance class, and then drop them off if they were in her custody. And then there were more. Like there were so many more demands, and I don't know why they're the only ones I remember, but there was a long list of them that were all as equally, for want of a better term, interesting. And if you do not agree to my terms, then there'll be a threat around the kids, which will be, I will move to a different city with the kids. So it was fun, not that great, and there were things that would happen which when you're in this period, you would start to find new strength. And I remember this one time, um, when you're in an abusive situation. Again, if you're listening to this and you've not been in an abusive situation, you can feel the barometric pressure change, irrespective of if it's text messages or psychic or whatever it is. You know when things are about to kick off because the reality is you've been in an abusive situation, you're hyper vigilant, you're in survival mode, so you are hyper aware of the other person's behaviors to a point of what looks like psychic is not. It's just you're hyper vigilant. So I remember this one time I was coming back, so this is again while we're still living together, post divorce, all that kind of stuff. And I knew the temperature was off. And I remember I got back and um, I kind of walked in, and you're like, oh shit, she's about to blow. And I kind of walked in. I was trying to be as calm as possible, and then she started on about division of assets. It was the toys, funnily enough. And she's like, I'm going to have these, you have those. And essentially, what it was, I'm going to have all the really good, expensive toys, and you get the $2 ones that kind of came in the essentially the version of McDonald's stuff. Like it's the crappy $2 ones. And I just was like, hey, it's kind of not how it works. And she, you don't know fuck about how anything works. You don't know fucking shit about how anything. I'm like, no, hang on. That's not how the division of assets. I bought these toys with my money, and I'll be like, well, actually, I paid for those, but also, again, that's not how it works. It's all our money. It's not your money and our money. It's our money. And she lost her shit. So there's a lesson in here which I'll get to. So for a full 30 minutes, I stood in the dining room while she stood in the sorry, I stood in the kitchen while she stood in the dining room, while she just screamed abuse about everything at me. Full 30 minutes. And I know it was 30 minutes because I actually timed it. And I watched my watch, and for the full 30 minutes, it was just off the top of her lungs, just screaming abuse about anything and everything about who I was as a human, my past, my like anything you can possibly, any aspect of me as a human being you can think of. It was getting screamed at me, and I remember distinctly being really fucking calm throughout all of it, and this is kind of grey rock on steroids. I was super calm throughout the whole thing. I didn't respond. I didn't react. Whenever she made demands, I responded, not reacted. I'd go, "Hey, no, I'm not agreeing to that." That was the tone and the response, and which would just set her off even more. And she'd be like, "You're always so fucking calm, and you're always this," and again, it would just get worse. And the lesson in here was don't do what I did, where she finally settled down after half an hour, whether she just kind of petered herself out, exhaustion wise of just screaming so much abuse. And I really stupidly said, um, "Hey, I don't think you realize how toxic you can be." Not the right thing to say. Not at all the right thing to say. That was perhaps the worst possible thing I could have said. And I think in my stupid defense, I think at that point I was trying really hard to keep calm, and one of the things I was trying to do to keep calm I was using grounding techniques. I was trying to breathe. I was trying to make sure that I didn't get drawn in. So to not get drawn in, I was doing a kind of name that tactic, which is a game that you do when you're getting screamed and abused, where you kind of go, "Oh, that's gaslighting. Oh, that's blame shifting. Oh, that's Darvo. Oh, that's this," and you kind of do this name that tactic game like it's bingo. And at the end, I think I was probably being more observational than communicative, where I was kind of like, "Hey, I don't think she actually realizes just like how many abusive tactics she did in the last 30 minutes." So it was more like just trying to, "Hey, I don't think you realize how abusive you are." Anyway, so that set her off, and that went on for another probably 10, 15 minutes of her just, like, losing her shit at me for having said that. And then, she demanded so again, this is where you have to be really careful in, exit time. So this is still in exit time, yeah? She demanded I vacate the property, and I refused. I said, "Hey, look," again, my lawyer's advice, I'm not leaving the property. I own this property just like you do. I'm not abandoning it." And then she's screamed abuse for a little bit longer, and I just had to hold that line, going, "No, I'm not vacating the property. I'm not leaving the property. I live here. Once we have done our settlement and we have divided the assets, then we're kind of clear and we know how to go." So that was really hard. But then she said, "I just need you out of the house. Just need you out of the house for today. Like just because I need to do some stuff here. and I can't fucking stand looking at your fucking face. So I said, look, I'm happy to leave for half an hour, but I'll be back in half an hour. So again, this is if you read my book, if you read my book around reconnecting with your emotions post abuse, um, this was a protective interrupt. So I'd kind of disconnected my emotional period at this point. So I left. I toddled down to a nearby park and sat down to take a breath. And then 20 minutes has gone by, and I'm just kind of sitting there, shell shocked, you know, in this park. This is why people who come out of this abuse have CPTSD, like myself, because you're shell shocked. Like you've just had someone abusing you for 30 minutes, and not it's not like you're bad. It's like someone who has known you for over a decade and knows exactly what buttons to press and exactly what things to say. So they're hitting you at your core being. So you walk away shell shocked. And I sat there in this park for 20 minutes, and then she rang. And I knew better. I answered. So if I didn't answer, it would have set things off. But I was also probably a lot more steady than I had been ever. So I answered, and she went, "Hey, hey, look, hey, I'm really sorry. I don't want to say things that, I'll later regret." I'm thinking, "Fuck, you just said a lot for the last half an hour." So come back to the house. And I said, "Hey, look, yelling at me like that was not okay. It was not okay." And she lost her shit. Um, Why the fuck can't you just fucking take a fucking apology, you fucking piece of fucking shit? And she just lost her, lost her shit again. And then hung up the phone. And I'm just like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? And there's a there's a second lesson in there, which is really important for someone who has been through this, which is when you have weathered through something like that, like this is just one incident. This is just an example. This is what my life used to be like. I'm just kind of pulling out one example of an incident for you. When you have been through something like that, I think you walk off both shell shocked, but also cognizant that you probably can, if you can weather stuff like that, you can probably weather quite a bit. Yeah. If you can weather someone ripping you to shreds at your core, and still walk away without reacting and trying to respond in a way that is still holding to your values, like me in that instance, going, "Hey, that wasn't okay." Um, it starts to tell you, "Hey, you can actually probably, you are actually probably do have a skill set to be able to weather through some of this." So now we're in this kind of exiting, and now we're getting the self confidence to exit. So that incident was an incident towards me. The kids were not immune. They were present for a lot of this stuff, and as I mentioned in a previous episode, one child withdrew, the other child went to parentification. So again, if you're just listening to this episode for the first time, parentification is when a child takes on the role of a parent. So when things would kick off, um, she would either go, "Hey," so my daughter would either go, "Hey, mummy, stop," or she would yell at her mum and just yell, "Stop, mummy, stop." And mum would go, "I'm allowed to have emotions. I'm allowed to have emotions. You shouldn't have to put up with this." And this is parental alienation. "You shouldn't have to put up with crap like this from your partner." So she'd say stuff like that to a 3-year-old. And again, these are 3-year-olds. But also, there would be these. I remember this one period when the ex-wife was trying to take a whole lot of. There was these really expensive pots, like just pots for plants that we had in the backyard, and she wanted all the really nice pottery ones, and wanted to leave me my half, which was the black plastic ones that you get the that you get the plants in from the shop that you take out and put into the pottery ones. And I was just again, now I had started to really awaken, and now I had seen this. Um, black notebook with all these false allegations. I was now fully eyes open to the person that I was with. Was starting to stand up for myself a lot more, and I go, "Hey, that's not how it works. Sorry, but that's not how it works. That's not how the pots are divided." And I remember this distinctly because we were in the side of the house where the pots were, and the kids were actually in the backyard playing, and I was near the kind of front. So kind of near the front door, which is on the side of the house. And she just started losing her shit. Like, you don't know shit. You don't know fucking thing. I bought this with my money. I bought this with my money. That kind of stuff. And and you don't know crap about pants anyway. You're gonna ruin them, and like all this kind of stuff. And I distinctly remember seeing the daughter who did the parentification pop her head around, and because I was facing the back, the ex-wife was facing the front of the house, and I saw the daughter kind of pop her head around the corner to see what was going on, and then she disappeared. And then 2 seconds later, she's come running out, came running up to me, grabbed me by the hand, and was like, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, I need the potty, I need the potty, I need the potty, I need the potty," and then dragged me towards the front of the house and in through the front door. And this isn't the first time she's done this. And as soon as I got in through the front door, she shut the door. And me kind of being still stupid, going, "Okay, let's take you to the potty." And she's like, "I don't need the potty, daddy." And like, fucking breaks your heart, man. Absolutely breaks your heart. Breaks your heart. No 3-year-old should know that. So it was pretty challenging. Pretty challenging. So this period then lent to a period of vacating the house. And the trigger to vacate, because that's the way I was thinking at that time, which was I need milestones to kind of get me to when to do this and when to do that. When do I vacate the house? Well, the trigger or the milestone that I had to vacate the house was when we had agreed that we were going to sell the property and divide the proceeds of the sale of the house. So when we'd kind of gone through the lawyers and agreed, yeah, okay, we're going to sell the house, that was when it became okay because we had now in writing which said, we agree we're going to sell the house, we agree we're going to negotiate the proceeds of the sale of the house. So it wasn't me abandoning the house anymore. So I packed up and moved into my mum's house. Um, God bless her cotton socks. But also, we verbally agreed to do 50-50 custody as well, because that was part of, written agreement through the lawyers, but not through the courts, that we would do 50-50 custody. So that was fantastic because that meant I could, um, set a precedent around what custody arrangements we have. And I'll get into the disaster that is the court systems in a bit. And then, so that was established. So now we had some separation. And then when I again, this is going to be a long episode, so my apologies. So then when I moved in with my mother, again, bless her cotton socks for allowing me to move in as a grown ass adult, who whose life had collapsed. Um, she still wasn't quite believing me at all. She still was in this mode of happy wife, happy life. That's what she grew up on: happy wife, happy life. So she still kept on with, but what did you do? but what did you do kind of narrative. Or if I would describe what was happening or what had happened, she was still quite, there was this undercurrent of, yeah, sure, kind of behavior, or even like, um, and no offense to her, but even this little bit of a soft, I didn't realize I had raised such a soft little girl of a man type behavior. So it wasn't quite full support yet. And it wasn't until a few things would occur, and like there was a few things that would occur. So um, again, signs of abuse. So if you think about signs of an abused person, you'll see ticks in them that you don't necessarily see with other people. So, and my mother was starting to notice when I was now living with her, these strange ticks that she would kind of go, "What the fuck was that?" So, for example, I had the kids in the bath, and they were bathing, and I was standing at the bathroom door watching them muck around and play in the bath, and I had my phone out. And I heard my mother walking up the hallway to the bathroom. And again, those of you who've been in abuse situations know this kind of the self check, self review tick that you have, where you go, she's walking towards me. I need to self check, self review. So I need to self check. Am I standing the right way? Am I behaving the right way? Am I doing all the right things? Am I doing the right context of stuff? Am I, watching the kids in this instance? Am I watching the kids? Am I acting as though I am fully 100% attentive to exactly everything that the kids are doing? Am I standing tall enough, or am I leaning against this in the wrong way? Have I got all the right things in front of me? Like, you do this self assessment, self review. And again, for those of you who have been in abusive situations, know exactly what that feels like. So I'd do that, and I'd just go, the shortcut to it is panic. Yeah, you'd panic, and she'd go, okay, what the fuck was that? And she would quiz me that later that night, going, hey, like, I noticed you did this. Like, can you explain to me what that is? And I'd have to go, hey, this is what this means. And this is going to sound stupid. It's going to sound like the silliest example. But my kids were playing with, my mum's a nurse, and she had these bandages mucking around, and my kids had done play doctor, so they'd kind of bandaged up their soft toys with all these different bandages, and there were three of them. One was short, one was medium, one was long. And after I put the kids to bed, and I was packing up, I started to roll. Again, this is a trauma response, and the subtlety in this is worth understanding, because I think it's hard to see this stuff unless you have someone describing it. So I started to roll up these bandages, and my mother said, "Oh, hey, give me one, and I'll help you." And I went into um, panic and self doubt. So I went to hand her the small one, panicked, changed my mind, put it back. Then I went to hand her the long one, panicked, changed my mind, put it back. And then I grabbed the medium one, went to give it to her with full panic over giving her this medium one. And she, you know, rightly went, "The fuck was that?" That was a bit weird. And I here was in this mode of now, it's called intellectualization of abuse, to create emotional distance from a traumatic event. So I was now in that, starting to get into that mode a lot more. And I went, okay, let me introspect and describe to you the thought process that just happened. I went to hand you the small one, and I panicked because I thought you would scream at me about me handing you the small one, thinking you are incapable of doing anything more, and thinking that's what you would scream at me for. So I pulled it back, and I hang on to it. Then I went to hand you the big one to compensate for that thought pattern. And then I thought, no, you're going to scream at me for giving you the big one and making you do all of the work. So then I pulled that one back, and then I went to hand you the middle one, and then I got confused over which one I should be handing to you before you took it. So that's the kind of thought patterns that you have as someone who's been in the abuse. So you can imagine how destabilizing and how confusing. Like that's an example of someone who is trying to clean up a couple of bandages. Not a big deal. Imagine how someone who's trying to enact an exit is going through this type of stuff. It's really, really confusing. Really, really confusing. So unless you do the work around trying to stabilize yourself, trying to respond, trying to kind of work this stuff through, then it gets really, really, really hard. So I was having those types of moments and um, having silly moments like my ex-wife, would I'd have to make her a cup of tea, and if I made her a cup of tea, there was a very specific process I had to make her a cup of tea in. Like, I had to have the tea bag in the teacup for exactly 3 minutes. I'd have to set a timer, not a second longer, not a second shorter. If it was a second longer or a second shorter, she'd go, I will know, and I will make you remake the cup of tea." And sometimes she'd say exactly those words, but laugh like it was all a joke. I'll know, and I'll have to get you to remake the whole cup of tea. So you'd have to be exactly 3 minutes. So I would set a timer when I would make a cup of tea for my ex-wife. So my mum would go, "Hey, can you make me a cup of tea while you're in there?" And I go, "Yeah, no worries." And I'd have these moments where I would make a cup of tea and I'd forgotten to set the timer for this cup of tea I made for my mum. And I went into full panic mode. Fuck, 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 fuck. I forgot to set the fucking like I went into full I can't even describe the moment that you have. And my mum's like, "What's going on with you?" Like kind of stuff. And it was here now. So now was the junction where my family was starting to believe that maybe I was in an abusive situation. And again, let that sink in for you. So this is post leaving the property, having initiated divorce and having lived with the abuser for an additional 5 months. And now that I was living with her, she was now starting to believe that maybe her son could be in an abusive situation. So that's not on her for that. That a lot of what she shared around why she was struggling to believe me actually were myths about men, not myths about me as a person. So she was, when I spoke to her about this afterwards, would go, "Well, I didn't think men could be abused. I thought men were the ones with the anger issues. So when you described her as being angry, I just thought you were mislabeling her being emotional. I thought you were just talking about her being emotional, and then you were mislabeling it as someone being abusive and someone being angry. So all of the myths that you would expect a man that kind of hinders a man as in an abusive situation, I would be hearing that from my mother, and that's not a critique on her. That's a critique on society, having taught my mother to not view her own son within an abusive situation. So again, it took her time to start to realize it, and then the in Australia, recording is so recording what's occurring is two party. So you have to have agreement from both yourself and your abuser to record. And I ignored it because there is a sub context to that, which is unless it's in defense of a criminal accusation, which is what my ex-wife had accused me of. She'd accused me of very criminal activities, and this is before we get to the court system, yeah, because she escalated and she accused me of some worse stuff when we got to the court stuff, which I'll get to in the next episode because that's all after CPS, Child Protective Services, came knocking on my door. So I was getting as organized as I could for court. And everybody around me who still were believing my ex-wife is this fucking angel. And people still believe my ex-wife is an angel. Don't get me wrong. Like I went to a Halloween party. And again, my apologies, this is not a long episode. I went to a Halloween party a few days ago with all the school friends of, because my kids are older now, all the school friends of my kids, and my ex-wife is friends with all of the parents, and they all fucking love her. Like she was sitting at the dining table, like just working up a charm with everybody. And I sat out in the backyard by myself the entire time, and I had two people who acknowledged I existed. You know? That stuff happens, and for me, I was like, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. I knew she would, weaponize the parents against me and tell lies. It is what it is. The only thing I'm going to focus on is my children, and to be honest, like kids recognize this stuff. They understand. Like my kids, like that Halloween party in particular. Those kids will always came to me whenever they got hurt in the playground or whether they needed support or they just needed a cuddle. They never went to her. Never went to her. They only ever came to me and then went straight back out to, the playground again, and it wasn't just proximity because they knew exactly where she was. So the kids do figure this stuff out, but, um, you know, parents-wise, like, 2 people acknowledge me, and when I think back on it, I think I realized why one of them was. I think one of them was sent over to uncover some information, about me, and I figured that out after the fact. But it is what it is, yeah? It's just another Tuesday. So it's a challenging situation. Very few people believe you because of these kind of cultural aspects and because the abuser has done such a fucking great job convincing the world that you are a bad human being. So we haven't yet gotten to divorce. We haven't yet settled, and we haven't yet agreed custody. And where I'm going to start to end this episode now is before I got to this point, what I was already feeling in terms of working through the legal system. So, already engaged lawyers, already engaged all that kind of stuff. And what I was already feeling, excuse me, what I was already feeling in the legal system throughout all of this process, like, I'm sorry, I just remembered there was a massive thing that happened in this period that I just forgot to mention, and I'll have to park it. It was this whole incident that happened. Oh no, I will tell you because it's relevant to the legal system. So what I was feeling about the legal system was the legal system would be extremely responsive to the needs of the female and not to the needs of the male. And if she said, "Hey, I want XYZ," it'd be, "Okay, no worries. Now you, man, tell me why she can't." And I'd be going, okay." And then I'd have to defend why that wasn't possible. And then I'd go, "Hey, but I want XYZ." And they'll go, "We'll go ask what she wants." And that was the experience. And you'd be like, "Hang on, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?" No, I said, "Hey, I want this. So why aren't you asking her how she defends against that?" So it was really crazy unconscious bias to the way the legal system itself operate. At least in again, I'll premise it, at least in my experience. So then if I would go, "Hey, look, I want 50-50 custody," which is what I wanted, then the legal system would go, "All right, well," and this is the way it was worded too. "Please tell us why you feel entitled to it." I'd be like, "What do you mean entitled? I'm not being entitled." And they're like, "Well, can you prove that you can actually manage 50% custody?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I can, but have you asked her if she can manage 50?" I'd be like, "No, but we need to find out from you whether or not you can actually manage 50% custody and why you feel like you might be entitled to it." And I'd be like, "What do you mean feel like I am entitled to it. I'm their fucking parent. Like I'm their fucking parent. So sorry, my anger is coming through. So the concept of fairness, the concept of equality was there on paper, but not in actuality. So if you read their documents, they kind of position it as um, everything is equitable. But if you engage with the people are biased. So so again, doesn't matter how fair any system is. A system is made up of people. It's people who you need to keep an eye out for because they are just people. Yeah, and a person is fallible, and a person can be good, and a person can be bad. So I had a really great lawyer who was absolutely awesome. She's an example of someone who is awesome within the legal system, and I was dealing with some really shocking people. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. So her legal representation would call up and paint me out as being this evil human being, and it'd be stuff like, "Hey, you know he's a terrible human being because he's got tattoos," and my lawyer would be like, "What the hell do you mean? How is having tattoos equal he's an evil human being? Well, he's got tattoos, so he must be a bad person." And this would be her legal representation, talking to us, and, my lawyer would be going, "Hey, just out of curiosity, like, I have tattoos. Are you telling me that I shouldn't have my kids and that I'm a bad person?" And also, a lot of police officers have tattoos. Are you telling them that they should not have kids and they're bad people? Like, what just explain to me. So there'd be these conversations that be going on all the time. And on custody, it would be, this is the insanity of it. So because the legal system was always so responsive to her needs, and I would have to defend against her needs, and I could never present like if I ever presented, "Hey, I want," it would be like, "Oh, yeah, we'll ask her." We had a informal, non-court, I can't remember the term, sanctioned agreement to do 50-50. And then at one particular point, the ex-wife said, "No, I've now got full custody. Um, you're no longer allowed to collect the kids as per our previously agreed schedule. I am now pulling custody. I have full custody over the children." And there was this whole period where the legal system kind of sprang into action for her to move to her every demand. And my needs, my desires were never sought after. They never sought to understand what my needs and my desires were. I would always have to respond in the system to her needs, and it was fucking scary. And in that instance, I had to go and grab my kids out of childcare early. I'd have to go in like an hour before normal pickup time to abscond them prior to the normal pickup time to continue to maintain the 50-50 custody, because my lawyers would be going, nah, sorry, love, not how it works. My lawyers being as awesome as they were, you don't just get to arbitrarily decide custody agreement. It has to be agreed between the two. Until it's agreed between the two, we're maintaining the existing 50-50. So it would have that kind of stuff that was occurring all the time. You can imagine how absolutely horrendous this period is. So for anybody who's actually in this period, it is um, very scary. Who for anybody who is looking to go into this period, do not be frightened by how scary it is. Any battle to protect your dignity, your integrity, and your children is worth it. Is it possible to go through this period and come out okay on the other side? Yeah, it is. Like I'm telling you my experience. I'm not telling you everybody's experience. I'm telling you my personal experience. Is it possible to get through? Yes, yes, it is. Did it work out for me in the end? Yes, it did. It worked out for me in the end. Did it cost me? Yes, yes, it did. Did it cost me a lot? Fucking oath it did. Would I have spent it? Fucking oath I would have. When I I'm probably going to wrap up there because I'm starting to get a bit emotional. But when I go into the next episode, if you thought what I had just described was a challenging situation for anyone, the next episode is 10,000 times worse than everything that I had just described. Would I go through what I went through in the next episode again for the sake of my kids to where I am today with my girls? Like, my girls are the absolute fucking light of my life. They are like, they'll just kind of randomly walk up and go, "Dad, I love you," and there's nothing in the world that could ever replace that those moments. Like, I'll have my daughters just kind of quietly come up and just go, "Hey, Dad, I just want you to know I love you," and that one sentence, insane, absolutely worth everything. Like, um, I said this to somebody earlier today, which is, I don't like the phrase, "A man sacrifices his happiness for his family," because I think that's the wrong frame. I don't think that's the right frame. We don't sacrifice stuff. We endure through hardship to achieve our goal. Yeah. It's not about sacrificing for the sake of our family. It's about enduring through hardship to achieve our goal. And our goal throughout all of this, and this is why I'm doing these series, is why I'm doing Stand Again, it's why I'm, laying out these tactics, is to get to a point where we're happy, we're healthy, we're thriving in life, where we've got an awesome relationship with our kids, we've got an awesome relationship with ourselves, and we've got an awesome relationship with the people around us and our loved ones. Yeah. And what I described and what I'm going to describe in the next episode is about endurance. It's not about survival. It's not about getting smashed. It's about endurance. Yeah. And sometimes you need to endure these types of hardships to get to the wonderful soft cookie, or gold, or whatever analogy you want to use at the other side of all of this. And it's worth it. It's worth it. You know. And you might not think you're strong enough, but I guarantee you, you are a lot stronger than you think you are. You are a lot stronger than you think you are. It'll be hard, and it is hard. Sorry, I am getting emotional. Sorry. It is hard to get through. Don't, not going to sugarcoat that. So you need to take care of yourself. So what I was doing, again, I'm going to end the episode on this, but I think this is important. Is I was working closely with my psychologist who was coaching me through this. I was doing the work. I was doing the work to heal. I was doing the work to understand my own triggers. I was doing the work to understand what wounds I had that needed fixing. I was working on how I could be a better dad, how I can be a better person, how I could be all of those things while also surviving, while also trying to make sure that things landed the way they should be landing. So, doing that kind of initial work that I described is what you need to fortify yourself against being able to work your way through this period that I described, the exiting period, and then the next period, which is the next episode, which is really hard. Like, if I hadn't been, hitting the gym, if I hadn't been doing the internal work, if I hadn't been journaling, all that kind of stuff, I probably wouldn't have had the fortitude to get through. So I know this. I'm going to wrap up this episode. I know that was um, probably not the ideal exit journey that most people would describe. I described a would want to hear. But when you are parting ways with someone who is abusive, this is actually what I described. Not that far from what typically happens. So it's worth being aware of it, worth understanding it, so that when shit hits fan, my phrase throughout this whole period, throughout all of everything I described, the phrase I just kept repeating to myself was, "It is what it is. She's going to do what she's going to do. I can't control what she's gonna do. She's gonna do what it is. My actual phrase was, "It's just another Tuesday." Like it yep, yeah. Here she is. It's just another Tuesday, which is kind of closely tied to see you next Tuesday, but it was just another Tuesday. And my responsibility is me. Like, how am I responding? What am I doing? What am I prepped up and planning to go? And the insanity that I was looking at, more often than not, I just go, hey, it is what it is. Yeah. My focus right now is not to respond to that. My focus right now is, make sure my affidavits are signed, make sure I've got my evidence in place, make sure I'm organized, make sure my kids are now feeling, because again, I'm pre child protective services knocking on the door, but I was now living with my mum, making sure that they were now experiencing the best possible time for the 50% custody that they did with me. So my time with my kids, now that I was in a new house, was all about setting a new standard around this is what it was like, and I needed that because it gave me a glimpse of what the future was likely to be once I got through custody negotiations and settlement negotiations. I'll save that bit for the next episode for when all shit goes to when it all kind of goes pear shaped. But until then, I hope somebody got some value out of this particular diatribe. Um, and as always, please drop in the word "stand again" into the chat. Those two words might just help. And another victim of family violence find theirs. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.